Special coverage of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates in South Carolina. Will Joe Biden be able to maintain his lead? The showdown in South Carolina coming your way next. Happening right now, 21 of the Democratic presidential candidates taking turns speaking at today's South Carolina Democratic Convention. We are tracking all of that for you live right here on MSNBC. And it comes during a critical stretch in the 2020 race. Former Vice President Joe Biden under fire for his comments about previously working with segregationists. We saw Elizabeth Warren there, Pete Buttigieg as well, rapidly gaining ground in the polls nationwide. Also the field getting set for the first debates on Wednesday and Thursday. Joining me right now, Democratic strategist Fatima O'Mara, Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Rick Tyler, and Justice Democrat spokesperson Waleed Shahid. So with a welcome to all of you guys. Fatima, I'm going to go with you first here. I do want to start with this controversy that Joe Biden is facing, which led to a standoff with Senator Cory Booker, both of them demanding apologies from the other, and the New York Times has the headline which describes what happened next. Here it is. Joe Biden called Cory Booker but apologized. It's not the Biden way. So do you get any sense that South Carolina voters are going to sense this is unresolved, there's some bad blood here or issues to go over? Does Biden need to make another attempt to clear the air today?
Well, one of the interesting things I've heard while I've been down here in Columbia, South Carolina, from other reporters and other activists, is that I think a lot of people want him to further talk about the comments that he made. I mean, the problem is that he was trying to have a conversation about reaching out across the aisle and being able to work with people you disagree with. The problem was he was mentioning Senator James Eastland and Talmadge, both of who were in his party and were virulent segregationists, which if they had been successful in their agenda, and they had been in that particular part of the wing of the party at that time, people like myself and other people of color in this country would not be able to enjoy the advantages that we enjoy today. That all being said, you know, it also happened around Juneteenth. And then to make it even worse, he demanded that the only African-American man running in the presidential race alongside him apologize. It was just bad optics on so many different levels. So I've heard a lot from people not wanting to dismiss him outright, certainly, definitely, I would say over the age of 50, who know him fondly as the guy who was the wingman to President Obama, but they definitely want to at least hear him talk a little bit more about why he made the comments the way he did, and to actually recognize the moment and the time that we are in this country, with Trump being president currently, and a lot happening racially in this country around Black Lives Matter, but things that happened in Charlottesville 2 years ago. You know, that's how he opened his campaign. So a lot of people have a lot of questions and want to hear more from him, and recognizing the moment that we're in right now as a country.
Saying essentially that he was very tone deaf in this time and place.
Yes, absolutely. I would say so. Yeah.
So, Waleed, I want to point out, first of all, before we chat about this, that the Justice Democrats have been pretty upfront about their opposition to Joe Biden in this primary race. So before I ask you about what Senator Harris said earlier, let's take a listen to this.
I know that we have in this White House a president who says he wants to make America great again. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean he wants to take us back to before schools were integrated? Does that mean he wants to take us back before the Voting Rights Act was enacted? Does that mean he wants to take us back before the Civil Rights Act was enacted? Does he mean he wants to take us back before Roe v. Wade was enacted? Because we're not going back.
All right, she's talking there about President Trump, but is there something more that she is trying to say?
I think she's trying to, slightly distance herself from Joe Biden's comments, where I think it's not just him putting his foot in his mouth or a gaffe, but I think it's actually who Joe Biden is. Sometimes he thinks he needs to cater more to conservatives than to Democrats. I mean, if you look time and time again with the activist energy in the Democratic Party, Joe Biden often opposes activist energy in the Democratic Party, whether it's over school busing or trying to stop the war in Iraq or trying to stop the crime bill or the Anita Hill hearings or the stuff with the Hyde Amendment. This is who Joe Biden is. He wants to play up that he can cater to conservatives, to Republicans, and not necessarily focus on energy. But the energy in the Democratic Party, the activist energy, often ends up being on the right side of history. So there are all these places where Joe Biden has kind of failed the test of leadership on these key issues of the past 30 years.
Interesting. Rick, do you think it's that the Democratic candidate will face a different standard with his or her base than the president did when we're discussing these kinds of issues? I mean, we saw what happened with him. We see what's happening now in terms of the discussions. And do you see a problem with that, if you think it's true?
Look, I think Joe Biden would be forgiven about it. I think the point is important. He's not a segregationist. He's never been in the segregation wing of his own party, and he's lived through the Democratic Party being a segregationist party, and it was, to where it is now. And so I do think Joe Biden will be forgiven about it. It is inexplicable, and this is what Joe Biden's, one of his weaknesses is he has these gaffes and he says things because in this particular case, if you're trying to make a point about getting along with the other side, as was already stated, he was not talking about getting along with Republicans. He was talking about getting along with segregationists. Now, that at that time, Democrats were in full control of everything, so you would have had to work within your party. But the point just should have never been made, and why he made it just left himself wide open to this criticism, and now he's likely going to have to clarify it.
All right. Listen, guys, I was able to offer my condolences and my apologies to Waleed about the expected brevity of this conversation, but it's because of all the live events we've got going on. Nonetheless, I appreciate all three of you. We'll have you back again. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alan.